have explored the human experiences in 3 texts due to the examination of motivations that drive human behavior. These texts include Beach Burial, Vesper Song, and the 2016 film Lion. In the poem Beach Burial by Kenneth Salessa, Salessa focuses on the main human experience of the meaningless and dismissal of lives lost to war. This individual human experience seen in the poem allows us to witness the motivations that drive Salessa's human behavior. Salessa worked as a war correspondent during World War II, who journaled stories first-hand from the war zone. Salessa's job would involve him to travel to the most conflict-ridden parts of the world and write about what he saw. His experience as an observer of the war crystallized many of Salessa's poetry, especially Beach Burial. Due to the inconsistencies and paradoxes within war, Salessa was motivated to write Beach Burial to highlight the dismissal of the deaths of soldiers. I can examine these motivations of Salessa when looking at his poem and the techniques Salessa decided to use. In the title itself, Beach Burial, Salessa's use of the paradox allows the audience to clearly view the inconsistency and waste of war. The paradox between the words beach and burial is unorthodox and ironic, as both juxtapose each other. The idea of the word beach associates with relaxation and enjoyment, whilst the idea of burial connects with connotations of death and grief. Salessa uses the juxtaposition here to highlight the irony and meaninglessness of the deaths of the soldiers. We can clearly see in the poem how Salessa conveys the human experience of insignificant death at war through his use of techniques. Salessa uses sibilants to create a sorrowful whispering effect in Unknown Seamen, the ghostly pencil. As we say this line, the use of sibilants creates a mysterious airy atmosphere that highlights the loss of identity of the dead soldiers and the dehumanization. It is as if the soldiers themselves are lost and forgotten with the simple breeze of the wind or the soft splash of the ocean. The soft S sounds accumulate to represent the misery associated with the deaths of so many fallen men. It also mimics the sound of the ocean, creating an inconsistency which juxtaposes death. The use of these techniques allow me to examine the human experiences it's conveying within this poem. Since he witnessed and journalized such tragic events, Salessa undertakes this poem in order to express the paradox of war and the forgotten and meaningless deaths of the soldiers. In addition, Salessa uses quotation marks around the line Unknown Seamen to personify the ghostly pencil. The personification of the pencil becomes ghostly, again conveying the fact that the pencil has more identity than the soldiers. This additionally highlights the insignificance of the soldiers' death. Salessa writes in the last stanza about the final deaths of the soldiers. Whether as enemies they fought, or fought with us, neither. The sand joins them together. Salessa reinforces his main point in these lines through the use of repetition of the word fought. This repetition metaphorically highlights the idea that it does not matter what side you fight for before you die, because it was all meaningless. Not only this, but literally, fighting didn't save them. The soldiers still died a pointless death. By replacing the word fought, it decreases the value of it. Yes, they fought and fought, but did it lead to anything? Did either side really accomplish anything? The repetition allows us to understand and examine the experience of meaningless and so-called unimportant deaths. The sand joins them together metaphorically means that when the battle is done, everyone will rot together as enemies. The fact that no matter which side the soldier is on, all participants end up united by one common thing, death, which in itself is an anomaly, and it is a division of what is normal. Salessa's use of the metaphor of this line clearly conveys the irony and foolishness of enemies joined together by the sand after death. We automatically think, what was the point of deaths if they are just going to die and rot together? Salessa creates this vision in order to provoke us to witness the waste and meaningless within war. Due to Salessa's use of techniques seen in the poem, we can clearly examine the human experiences of the meaningless and dismissal of lives lost to war. Vesper Song of Reverend Samuel Marsden. Salessa conveys the abuse within authoritative figures through his satirical portrayal of Reverend Samuel Marsden in the poem Vesper Song. Salessa writes negatively about the troubled persona of Samuel Marsden, a man portrayed positively in history, to highlight the human experience of abuse and authoritative figures. Salessa was motivated to write about Marsden due to the inconsistencies of his actions and words. Salessa uses many techniques throughout his poem Vesper Song, which ultimately convey his criticism against the human behavior of abuse of authoritative figures. The first technique seen throughout this poem is the use of rhyming couplets and iambic tetrameter. These techniques create a sing-song rhythm which highlights the unseemly nature of Salessa's perceived persona of Marsden's desires. Brutes, boots, whole soul, hell, well, sin, in. By using rhyming couplets, we as the audience feel disturbed. The happy sing-song-like poem clashes with and challenges the imagery of whipping and imprecation seen later in the poem. This perceived troubled view of Marsden highlights Salessa's view on authoritative figures. Through the use of these techniques, it provokes me to examine further into the motivations that drive Salessa's human behavior. Celeste chose Marsden to express the idea that although many authoritative figures seem like flawed individuals, they all abuse their position and power in order to carry out their own actions. For example, Marsden did many virtuous services such as opening orphanages and schools around Australia, but all that represented extreme severity in the poem, such as flogging, are historically accurate. Celeste writes this poem in Marsden's persona to highlight the abuse of authoritative figures. Furthermore, Celeste is expressing Marsden's abuse of his authority in the poem through his lack of consistency within his actions and words. Throughout the poem we can witness these views of Celeste, and he makes fun of the persona of Marsden by stating, "Lord, I have sung," with Sisyphus' lips.
Here Celeste writes about Marsden and the perception that he is sanctimonious.
Celeste uses sibilants to reinforce the joy and pleasure that Marsden receives through doing harm. The harsh S sound conveys the sounds associated with snakes, which are perceived as evil and sinister. Due to the sibilants, it reinforces how the perceived persona of Marsden was truly harmful and hypocritical, with his actions versus his words. This hypocritical abuse can clearly be seen in the poem. "Oh, souls that leak with holes of sin, shall I not let God lather in? Or hit with sacramental now, your twice convicted vileness out."
The idea that Celeste is using
The persona of Marsden to state these sentences reinforces Celeste's view on authoritative figures and the abuse of their power. In addition, during the 1930s, Celeste lived during the time of the Great Depression. As a result of this, and World War I, there was a huge lack of respect of authoritative figures due to the neglect of the people's needs. Not only this, but the 1930s was a post-Christian society, which explains Celeste's criticism on Marsden, who was an Anglican minister. Due to this examination of Celeste's motivations, he invites the readers to also disdain authoritative figures and religion. This is evident in the poem through Celeste's use of high modality. He states, "Go lick and learn at these my boots." The use of the word go contains high modality, which reinforces Marsden's enjoyment in a powerful position. By using his power in this way, Celeste conveys Marsden as abusing the use of authority. This explains why Celeste disdains abuse of power and wrote Vesper's song. The related text I chose is the film Line. This film looks at the life of Saru Birali, who at 5 years old finds himself lost on a train which takes him thousands of miles across India, away from his brother and mother. Later, Saru is adopted by an Australian couple where he spends the next 25 years of his life living in Hobart. Saru encounters many events and human experiences throughout this film. Saru soon finds himself contemplating his identity and starts remembering about his life in India with his mother and brother. In this film, the use of techniques and scenes provoked me to examine Saru and his individual human experience of self-discovery. The first scene where we notice Saru attempting to rediscover his past and to figure out his identity is when he remembers eating an Indian delicacy with his brother in India. The use of the close-up angles here allow us to see and witness Saru's expression and confusion as he tries to connect the past together and discover who he is. We can see through this use of transitioning close angles, shots, and flashbacks how Saru has been motivated to find his family and discover his true identity. The red colour symbolism of the Indian dessert, jalebi, in the scene symbolizes passion, love, and blood. By using such a dark, distinct colour, the red in the scene is significant as it highlights Saru's aim for self-discovery. The love, passion, and blood associated with the red jalebi contributes to Saru's rediscovery of his past and understanding his identity. These nouns all represent Saru's connection with his family. The jalabis remind Saru of his love and blood connection with his family back in India, and by showcasing the jalabis it highlights Saru's loss of identity and search for self-discovery. In addition, the direct dialogue between Saru and his friends after the scene highlights the pain and confusion in his self-identity. He states, "I'm not from Calcutta, I'm lost." Through the strain in his voice and direct dialogue, we can see how Saru is confused about who he is and how the film focuses on the motivations behind Saru's human experience of self-discovery. Another scene in which Saru is motivated to find his home is when Saru is flicking through Google Earth in order to rediscover his home himself. The use of the sided lighting in this scene creates a dramatic and suspenseful mood. By doing so, it conveys the idea of whether or not Saru will find his identity. It also symbolizes the journey of self-discovery for Saru. One side of Saru's face is covered in darkness by his shadow, symbolizing the confusion and loss in who he is, whilst on the other side of Saru's face projects light, which is symbolic of the hope and fight for self-discovery. Furthermore, the close-up shot of Saru's face allows us to witness the emotions of Saru in order to see what he is thinking. It is used in the scene to allow the audience to focus their attention on the actor's expression. We see within Saru's expression, due to the close-up shot, his fight for self-discovery.
Through these techniques, I can examine the motivations behind Saru's human experience of self-discovery.